The night the Skinwalker came for the Marine checkpoint started like every other graveyard shift I pulled in the high desert, quiet enough that the silence itself felt like a presence. We were posted at an improvised checkpoint carved out of rock and sand at the edge of a reservation-adjacent training zone, miles from the nearest town and far enough from base that radio static was just something you learned to live with. The moon hung low and yellow, washing the terrain in a dull glow that made every shadow look like it was hiding something. We had Jersey barriers, concertina wire, a watchtower made of stacked HESCO barriers, and just enough floodlights to give us the illusion of control. There were 6 of us on shift, all Marines, all tired, all pretending we didn't feel that low animal instinct buzzing in the backs of our minds telling us that the desert doesn't like to be watched. I remember joking with Ramirez about how the coyotes sounded closer than usual, how they were calling in weird broken rhythms instead of their normal yips, but even as I laughed I felt that subtle tightening in my chest, the one that comes when your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. It was around 0100 when the first thing went wrong, though at the time none of us recognized it as a warning. The thermal camera mounted on the tower flickered, then briefly showed a heat signature far out past the wire, tall, thin, moving on 2 legs, but with a gait that didn't look human. It blinked out before we could lock onto it, and the system reset itself like nothing had happened. Equipment glitches were common out there, dust got into everything, and heat messed with electronics, so we shrugged it off. Still, I couldn't stop myself from scanning the horizon with my nods, the green wash revealing rocks, scrub, and nothing else. Then we heard a voice, clear as day. It came from somewhere beyond the checkpoint, carried on the wind. It sounded like a man, maybe middle-aged, calling for help. He knew English. He knew how to pace his words, how to inject just enough panic to sound real. "Hey," the voice said, breaking slightly. "Please, I'm hurt. I need help." Every Marine there froze, because the voice was coming from an area no one should have been able to reach without tripping sensors or lighting up our cameras. Ramirez muttered that it was probably some drunk who wandered off the highway, but even as he said it, his hand tightened on his rifle. The voice called again, closer this time, and that was when Corporal Hayes, who grew up near Navajo land, went pale. He didn't say anything at first, just shook his head slowly, eyes fixed on the darkness. When I asked him what was wrong, he whispered, "Don't answer it. Whatever you do, don't answer it." Before I could ask why, the voice changed. It said Ramirez's name, perfectly. Same tone, same cadence as if someone had been listening to us for hours. "Ramirez," it called. "Come on, man. You said you'd help me." The sound of it made my skin crawl, because no one out there should have known any of our names. That was when the floodlights flickered, just once, and in that split second of dimness, something moved near the wire, fast, low, wrong. We went to full alert immediately, weapons up, eyes sweeping every angle, radios crackling as we tried to raise higher command. Static drowned out half our calls and the rest came back delayed and distorted like someone else was speaking over us. The voice outside started laughing then, but it wasn't human laughter. It was like someone mimicking the idea of a laugh without understanding it, stretching and compressing the sound until it came out jagged and uneven. The smell hit us next. A wet, coppery stench mixed with something rotten like old meat left in the sun. One of the motion sensors near the outer perimeter tripped, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession, as if something was pacing back and forth just out of sight. I caught a glimpse through my nods of a shape crouched near a boulder, and my brain struggled to process it. It looked like a man at first glance, but its limbs bent at angles that made my eyes hurt to follow, and its head sat too low on its shoulders, jerking side to side like a bird's. Hayes finally spoke, voice shaking despite himself, and told us in a rush about skinwalkers, about stories he'd heard growing up, about witches that wore the skins of animals and people, that mimicked voices to lure you out, that fed on fear and curiosity. I wanted to tell him to shut up, that this was just stress and darkness messing with us, but before I could, the thing outside stood up. It rose to a height that couldn't be human, bones cracking audibly as it straightened and stepped into the edge of the floodlights. What I saw there still follows me into my dreams. Its skin looked wrong, stretched and sagging in places like it didn't quite fit the frame underneath. Its face was a mockery of a human face, features slightly off, eyes too reflective, mouth pulled into an expression that might have been a smile if it hadn't shown too many teeth. It tilted its head and spoke again, this time in Hayes' voice, perfectly copying his slight drawl. "See?" it said. "Nothing to be scared of." Someone fired. I don't even remember who. The crack of the rifle shattered the night, and the round hit the thing square in the chest, punching through skin that split and folded like wet leather. It staggered back, let out a shriek that sounded like multiple voices layered on top of each other, and then it moved. I've never seen anything move like that. It dropped to all fours and sprinted along the wire, impossibly fast, blurring in and out of the lights. We opened up, controlled bursts at first, then full panic fire as it leapt, climbed, and slammed itself against barriers with enough force to rattle them. Every time a round hit, it reacted, but it didn't go down. It just kept coming, circling, testing, learning. The voice shifted constantly, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes begging, sometimes shouting orders in a Marine's voice, trying to confuse us, to break our coordination. Through it all, the radios screamed with static, and the floodlights dimmed again, plunging half the checkpoint into shadow. At one point, it got inside the wire. I don't know how. 1 second it was outside, the next it was there, crouched near a stack of supplies, its head swiveling as it took us in. Up close, the smell was overpowering, and I could see details I wish I couldn't. The way its skin rippled as if something underneath was shifting, the way its eyes tracked multiple Marines at once. It lunged at Lance Corporal Dean, knocking him off his feet with terrifying strength, and for a split second I thought it was going to tear him apart. Instead, it leaned close to his face and whispered something I couldn't hear over the gunfire, and Dean screamed, not in pain, but in pure gut-deep terror. We dragged him back and kept firing, and finally the thing retreated, scrambling up the tower like an insect before launching itself off into the darkness beyond the checkpoint. The moment it vanished, the night went dead quiet, like the desert itself was holding its breath. We stayed at full alert until dawn, hearts pounding, fingers white-knuckled around our rifles. No one slept. The radios eventually cleared, and higher command finally responded, sending a patrol that found nothing. No tracks, no blood, no sign of anything having been there at all, despite the damage to our barriers and the empty shell casings littering the ground. Dean wouldn't talk about what the thing whispered to him, not then, not ever. He was medevaced later that day, diagnosed with acute stress reaction and sent stateside. Officially, the incident was written up as a false contact combined with equipment malfunction and wildlife interference. Unofficially, none of us believed that for a second. Haze burned sage when we got back to base. Ramirez stopped joking about the coyotes. And me, I still think about those 17 minutes. The way the thing knew us, the way it smiled like it was wearing someone else's face. And I know one thing for sure. Whatever attacked that checkpoint wasn't an animal, wasn't a man, and it wasn't something that cared about our rules or our weapons. It was something old, something patient, and I'm convinced it walked away that night not because it couldn't kill us, but because it had learned enough to come back another time.